Hello, and welcome to the Emerging Technology Horizons podcast. I'm Arun Seraphin, Executive Director of NDIA's Emerging Technologies Institute. The Software as a Modernization Priority Workshop in November 2022 was hosted by the National Defense Industrial Association's Emerging Technologies Institute in collaboration with the Department of Defense's sole software-focused federally funded research and development center, Carnegie Mellon University Software Engineering Institute, SEI. The workshop focused on the challenges and opportunities associated with ensuring that software capabilities provided a competitive advantage to national defense. The workshop delved into key capabilities that lead to software advances for defense, and where government investments can yield the greatest economic and national security impact, especially in a world where the commercial sector plays such a big role. I'd like to acknowledge and thank the entire workshop team that worked on that workshop and on the follow-up report. That includes Camila Shanley and Undral Dalai from ETI, Dr. Forrest Shull and Alyssa Lesage from Carnegie Mellon, Gia DeHart and Dr. Maren Lead, and thank all of the NDIA members who participated in that really great workshop. We're rolling out the workshop report on our website and are thrilled to be discussing the work that we did on today's podcast as part of that rollout. My guest today is one of the co-conspirators, co-planners of that workshop, Dr. Forrest Shull from Carnegie Mellon Software and Engineering Institute. Forrest is the lead for Defense Software Acquisition Policy Research at CMU's Software Engineering Institute. His role is to lead work with DoD, other government agencies, national labs, industry, and academic institutions to advance the use of technical information, empirically grounded information to inform policies related to software engineering. Currently, he's providing technical leadership to the DoD in support of important initiatives to improve software acquisition, which will culminate in the development of department's first software-specific acquisition policy. I think that's in process underway. He's been one of the lead researchers on projects for DoD, NASA, NSF, and many commercial companies. He's the author of over 100 peer-reviewed publications and co-editor of the Guide to Advanced Empirical Software Engineering. Please join me in welcoming Forrest to today's podcast. Forrest, thanks for joining us today. I'd love to get into the workshop and the report, but I want to start by asking you about your background and how you came to the role you have with CMU.
Great. Well, first, thanks for having me, Arun. This is wonderful. Always a great opportunity to, further the conversation here on these important topics. But I actually began with my career, I guess, getting my PhD at University of Maryland. And the work I had done at the time was mainly for NASA, but all related to software assurance, so how we can build high quality software without unexpected surprises as we're trying to get it to the field, and with high confidence in the safety, security, mission criticality, all those other good abilities that we like to build into software. And about 10 years ago now, I think, I moved over to the Software Engineering Institute, began working more for the Defense Department. And I guess really got into the software modernization thrust back in 2017, 2018, at which time there was a couple congressionally mandated areas of work, actually. I know Congress has always, throughout that last time period, really been paying attention to the importance of software in the DoD. And wanting us to move forward in a very evidence-based way. And so those evidence-based skills I had developed in my earlier research, I guess, came into play with some of the work I was doing with the DoD at that time, both with series of pilot programs, looking at moving some of our acquisition programs over to more agile, modern software, modern ways of doing software, as well as with the Defense Innovation Board's SWAP study, which we supported along with other FFRDCs here at SEI.
So tell me a little bit more about SEI. What is SEI? What role do they play as an FFRDC? What are the general scope of areas that SEI works on?
Sure. So SEI is really, the Software Engineering Institute, SEI, is really part of Carnegie Mellon University, which is wonderful. I mean, because we're just part of that larger, first the campus community and then out to the larger research community and all the good innovation that's going on there that we get to be part of and have insight into. But SEI is a very distinct and different part of the university system because we're officially designated as a federally funded research and development center, which means we're kind of placed to be the trusted, honest broker in a way for some of the technical issues that the DoD is wrestling with. And I'll just say, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier when you talked about bringing that population, or the number of different stakeholders that need to be involved in the software modernization work. I mean, we certainly see a lot of innovation coming out of academia and the universities, but there's so many industrial companies that are really dealing with these issues at scale, and being able to do things in the large that we care about. And also, just being able to take a look at what's happening in other government agencies. And I think that, the really thing I've appreciated about the SEI is that we, by virtue of our special role, kind of sit in between all those communities and get to see a lot of the cross-pollination that goes on, and help bring it along, I guess, where we can as well.
And then you're located in 2 locations, right? Or more than 2 locations?
That's right. Well, we have a number of different operating locations, we being the SEI, but I think our 2 biggest offices are here in Pittsburgh, where I am today, actually up at the mothership on campus. And then we have an office in Washington, D.C. in Ballston, which is where I'm more frequently located, specifically to be close to our customers in the Pentagon and other seniors in Washington there.
That's great. So let's start with the softball. Big question. Why is software so important for DoD these days?
Well, that's a wonderful question. And I mean, the simple answer is, and the one that we're hearing more often, I guess, because people are recognizing it more, is that software is really in everything that we do. I guess the saw that's been going around lately is that almost every system that the Defense Department acquires, with the possible exception maybe of the ammunition, has software in it in some place. But even the ammunition has software that goes into the control processes, the manufacturing processes, and all the rest. So I think in terms of where we're getting capability out, in terms of the importance across the broad sweep of all of our systems in the department, software is really one of the more important. Well, to my mind, it's important. Of course, I'm biased, but I think it's also, until recently, been a little underappreciated. I think software has suffered from the fact that it's not a physical thing. I don't look at a system and see that there's a software component to it. And for that reason, there's actually a long series of studies, if you take a look at it, giving advice to the department and asking them to pay more attention to software. And so I think we've been really thrilled over the last, like I said, 8 years or so, to see that message really starting to resonate, and a lot more of the attention being paid to software modernization than was true in the past.
So let's think about then first DoD as a customer for software. Why is it so hard that for DoD to be a good software customer? Why are people so frustrated with DoD's ability to buy software in a way that helps us keep up with commercial innovation and make sure that the platforms and weapon systems have the best possible software?
Sure. Well, I think up until recently, we've been with the Defense Department, at least I should say, has been treating the acquisition of software very differently from what goes on in the commercial world. And so we've kind of created this very different ecosystem from a lot of the good best practices that went on in industry. And for that reason, I think managed to miss out, I think, on some of the real paradigm shifts that really led things to take off in industry. I think we're all familiar, with how quickly capability can be pushed out on our phones, and all the other pieces of software that we have in our day-to-day lives. And up until recently, the Defense Department didn't really treat software in the same way. We tried to really treat it as just part of the larger system, and use some of the same processes, I'd say, that we traditionally use to acquire software.
Treat it like a subsystem, like an engine as part of an aircraft.
Absolutely,
like that.
Which at some level it absolutely is. It's a piece of the system, and we don't. We don't really care about the software in and of itself. We care about the capabilities it provides to the larger mission, right? So I think some of that has not been a surprise, that we treat it that way. And at the same time, I think we've really been very risk averse, and of course, in ways we have to be. I mean, the systems that we acquire in the department have to be hugely reliable. Have to make sure that we're safe. That they are able to perform the duties that we expect them to at a moment's notice, when we really need it to be there. And so for that reason, of course, there's a lot of factors that might drive us to be somewhat risk averse. But I think the biggest problem has been that we just have these very long planning horizons, or have traditionally had these very long planning horizons in the department for the way that we allocate funds, for the way that we acquire our systems. And what we've really seen over the years with software is that it's so dynamic, it's so malleable, it's very it's almost always the most cost efficient way to get new capability out, and therefore things change a lot, and our expectations for the software evolve. And so this notion that we used to have, where I can think very hard and very deeply about what the software needs to do for a while up front, and then go off and build it for years and years and years and get something out at the other end, just doesn't really work well with software, because the pace of the underlying technology just changes so quickly that some of those assumptions very quickly get out of date. And also that our customers and our users are coming to software with a very different set of expectations now. I think because in many ways we see how quickly it changes in real life, and we want that level of dynamicism. We want to have input into our systems and see the acquisition process change and take account of that, in the same way within the department. And so I think we've really seen a sea change in the way the department has been doing software. As you mentioned, I think in the intro, there is, for the first time, a software-specific acquisition policy, which now looks so different from the traditional way of doing things.
And that's still in the process of being sort of trained up and used and disseminated and distributed across the department.
Well, it's out there. So it was signed out in, I think, December 2020, I want to say. So as things have been progressing since then, we see more and more programs kind of opting in. These aren't programs that can change on a dime, right? So many of them really have to get to a good point where it's easy to make the transition and then go over to the new pathway. But we're really seeing, I think, a population that's been continuously growing since 2020, when the policy came out, being able to take advantage of it now, which is very heartening.
So beyond the challenges that DoD as a customer with the traditional culture of hardware acquisition faces in being a good software consumer, what the workshop focused on was really more DoD's other traditional role in technology, which is as a developer, right? As a research funder, as a developer of new innovative capabilities, cutting edge capabilities. ETI co-hosted a workshop with you all at SEI, and had great participation from the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense from Research and Engineering, Heidi Shu's office. We did that late last year. The focus was software as a modernization priority, because Ms. Shu has made software one of her 14 critical technology areas. And like I said earlier, that report is coming out very soon. It'll be available on the NDIA website, ETI's website as well. The workshop looks at software not so much as an acquisition problem, but as almost looking at it as a science and technology opportunity, right? And if I think about the field of software, computing, computer science, all of those fields, DoD has historically played a huge role in the development of those fields and funding some early work and continued work that's shaped the way that software is done today in both military and commercial systems. I think that's all fair to say. The workshop that we worked on and the report has some really detailed recommendations on how DoD can use that S&T portfolio and other related activities to better keep pace with and leverage the burgeoning commercial software field, right? And all the innovation that's coming from the commercial software sector, including how DoD should focus its limited resources, right? How to focus its S&T investments, right? The workshop, I would say, focused on a couple of different areas. The recommendations focus on a couple of areas: technology priorities, infrastructure, workforce issues. And so, I'm hoping that we can talk through some of the motivation and some of the recommendations behind the workshop and the report. So starting with that, so what do you feel like was the major motivation behind holding the workshop and trying to put together a report like this? And, why do you think it was structured the way it was?
Good. Well, first off, as I've said, I think we've really seen that sea change beginning in the department, right? With being able to take more advantage of the malleable nature of software, being able to be more adaptive and iterative in our acquisition process. And at the same time, although I think it's very important that we stay in tune with what the commercial industry is doing, make sure that we're taking advantage of the good practices that have really been proven out, in terms of that being just the default way of doing software now for much of the commercial world. There are very unique DoD specific problems as well, and we don't want to overdo that. We don't want to maximize them and therefore cut ourselves off from good practices out there. But I think we need to be very intentional about the way that we're looking at those practices and how we bring them in. And for that point of view, I think it really is it's a community effort in the best sense of the word, right? That we really need not only the government side to be aware of what this new paradigm shift looks like, being able to be adaptive, being able to, in some cases, think in smaller planning cycles and being able to take advantage of that adaptiveness, which we don't typically tend to do. In other cases, we want to make sure that our contractors are able to perform in the ways that we expect, where we have, in some cases, even some of the smaller companies, some of the startups that have very innovative solutions, we want to make sure that they feel part of the conversation and that they have pathways to get that technology into the systems that we're building and acquiring in the department. And similarly, I think for the academic side too, I mean, that there's advances that are going on out there. And one of the things about software is that we're never going to be in a done state. We're never going to be caught up to a place where we say, okay, good, that problem is sorted now, because the technology is still changing so quickly underneath us. And so we really need to be having that conversation as well with the academic community to make sure that we know what's over the horizon and where things are headed, so that we can, to the extent possible, kind of plan to be able to adapt to those other waves as they come down the course towards us. And so from that point of view, we're really appreciative of the work that you all did at ETI to bring together that very diverse set of stakeholders, so that we could have a conversation with all those different perspectives represented and taking part.
Another piece, and you left this out maybe because of humility, is we were really leveraging a report that you all did over on the SEI side. You want to talk about that report and how that led into this?
Yeah, so one of the things we had done, and for exactly that reason, I mean, as the DoD's FFRDC that's devoted to software engineering, we also felt part of our job is to be looking over the horizon and see what's coming down the pike. And we're very well acquainted with the research themes that are going on today, but where is all that taking us, and what's the future going to look like? I guess is one of the things we need to be aware of, and then be able to reflect that to our customers. So about 2 years ago, I think it was over the pandemic, actually, ending up around early 2021, I think, we had at the SEI conducted a study on just really trying to do a very broad community-based effort, talking to a lot of the major stakeholders in the government, in academia, in industry, understanding their thoughts about where they see things headed in their own little stovepipes, I guess, but then trying to abstract up from that. What are the themes that we kind of see now across all these different domains, and where are things headed? And so we do have a report out on that, which maybe we can attach to the website here if people want to get to it. But I think one of the major things that we saw were kind of 6 detailed themes about where the research is going, and where some of the research thrust areas that are coming, that are, I think, beginning today, but are going to be continued to be big in the future. But if I could put just one big bumper sticker across the top of it all, I mean, I think what we really see is this need for us to continually scale up and work at larger and larger systems, more and more complexity in what we're doing, is never going to go away. That we're always going to have, I think, higher and higher expectations for what our software needs to do, and just how ubiquitous it is. And so maybe the way that we solve that, maybe the way we square that circle, is we see AI coming into the process more as a trusted partner, in order to help us deal with that engineering complexity, and leaving the creative parts of it, where solutions really have to be designed more for the human that's going to be in the loop. So I think there's challenges today, and those are only going to be different. They're going to be worse and different tomorrow. So we need to continue to invest in this. But there's also some of the solutions today that I think are going to pay dividends in helping us deal with it all as we go forward.
So let's talk about a few of the recommendations. Again, there's many recommendations. There's some nice findings in the report. I commend the report to all of the viewers. It's available on our website. One of the recommendations coming from the workshop was that DoD should prioritize the development of capabilities that'll enable the maximum possible use of commercially driven AI-enabled tools, like you just touched on. Can you go into more detail on what this would help with and how possibly this could be done?
Oh, absolutely. And that was a good recommendation. Particularly, and I think there's two important parts I wanted to call out there. So the first is the AI, obviously, and that's, like I said, AI, is something that we're building into our systems, and we're also using it on the other side of the ledger, if you were. I mean, we're using it, starting to bring it into the actual engineering process as well, as I mentioned, to help us kind of deal with all this complexity and scale. And so these are, I think, very important technologies for us to be aware of as we go forward. I mean, there's a lot of overhype out there today, which makes us technical folks cringe, I guess, a bit from time to time. But but at the same time, we can't be blind to the fact that not only is it important for us in the systems that we're building, but it's an important technology in the world that we inhabit, where we really are facing peer and near peer adversaries for the first time. There's been a lot of investments made in this in other nations around the world, and we want to make sure that we're keeping pace with that. So these are I think technologies that are absolutely worth experimenting with, that absolutely need to be understood, and see where we can bring it into to provide that value at scale. But the second part of that recommendation that I thought was important was the commercially driven or commercially supplied part of it. And I think in some ways that says, again, that we can't replicate that situation we found ourselves in 8 years ago, where we had kind of done things that were so unique in the department that we were not able to communicate very well with the commercial world and keep up with commercial practices in software. And so I think that the same here, that there's clearly going to be ways that these AI solutions need to be tailored and brought into our solution space, and adapted to our domain. But we do need to be very much a fast follower, for what industry is doing, and make sure that we're leveraging all that good innovation and investment that's going on out there, and not being cut off from it.
And I guess what you're saying there is that that's not just a change in customer behavior. This is not acquisition reform.
Mm-hmm.
Some of this is actually work that needs to be done through science and technology investment, through new innovation at universities, small businesses, defense industry, commercial industry. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. In fact, that's what makes this such a complex space, is that it's really all of the above, right? I mean, it's making sure that we have access to the technologies and can help bring the technologies along, but then also that for the unique environment that we have about trying to get these into our warfighters' hands, that we're able to do that in an effective way as well.
One of the things that the workshop pretty quickly got into was the DoD's use of legacy code.
Yes.
So what is legacy code?
Good. Well, first off, legacy code is, I think we can call it any code that's been in existence for a while, right? So all of our systems are very long-lived, or at least they tend to be in the department.
The hardware
and
side
in the
of it,
outside world
especially.
too. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Say again.
Say the hardware side of systems tends to
Oh,
last for a
absolutely.
long time, right?
Yes, yes. But even the software too. And then, the department, I think it's been called the largest engineering organization in the world. And so the amount of systems that are out there with software in them, and these systems have all been long lived, is just immense, right? So we do have a very large, kind of existing set of systems that we have to worry about maintaining and sustaining and keeping up and keeping them adaptive to the current world. And so let's call legacy software any of this kind of long-lived software that's been out there for a while. It's really maybe gotten to the point of its life cycle where changes aren't quite as frequent as they used to be, but we're always going to need to adapt it. We know that we live in a very dynamic mission space. We know the technology is changing underneath it all the time, that we need to modernize these things. And so it's not a zero cost, right, to have these things in our inventory and have to keep up with them. And I think part of what we're dealing with is that all these things have had very different life cycles, right? Some of them have been maintained very well, have wonderful architectures, have been really kept up and make sure that what's there is technically proficient. In other cases, we might have bounced it back and forth among different contractors or vendors over the years, and maybe not everyone did the best job in making their particular changes while they had it, right? So some of this might have been nicely architected in the beginning, but that's really degraded over time, as these systems have been so long-lived. And that gets us into a related topic, which is technical debt, right? Which is important to us for many reasons, not least of all because, again, Congress has very helpfully required that we do a study on technical debt in the department. But technical debt is kind of our software shorthand for saying shortcuts that I might have taken over with the software over time, right? I'm very anxious to get things out. It's immensely important for me to get software in front of the user. And so maybe under the hood, some of the shortcuts I might have taken are not what I would have done if I had more time, right? And these things are not bad in and of themselves. They, like I said, they help us they help us achieve other important goals, like getting working software out in front of people quickly so we can get feedback. But if these things are left to build up and never refactored, then what we're going to have is a system where things have degraded over time, and it gets harder and harder to make each change that we know we have to go in there and do. So again, I don't think we've always had the level of visibility that we need to in all of our legacy systems into that technical debt. But that's something, again, that I think, seeing more programs kind of getting caught up and doing the right thing these days. But to come back to the point about why the workshop cared about this, is it's an area I think where S&T can really help. I think we're always looking for better solutions. I think the workshop participants cared, or kind of put forth some of the automation that's out there to kind of help us find these shortcuts or symptoms of the shortcuts, so that we can make sure that we have them on our list and go back and catch up with them later on. So this is a large issue for the department. We do have that large, we do have just reams and reams of existing code, some of it very old. And being able to triage and understand what to do with that is definitely an area where automation can help, and where S&T can help advance the state of the art, I think.
The workshop got into workforce issues as well, and one of those, there's a series of recommendations related to software workforce. One of the recommendations hones in on retention. So broadly speaking, what struggles does DoD face with retaining internal expertise in software?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, I think, because we do have a wonderful workforce within the department, that we're always have done really great things for the systems that we have. But we do have a couple
and
of
they have
challenges.
they have a complex task, right? Software people in the department have to execute missions using software. They have to regulate software. They have to purchase software. They have to manage and sustain software, right? It's a whole cast of different activities related to software.
It's a very large scope of activities and responsibilities, and some of it being in very specialized domains, right? That I don't often get trained up on if I'm coming to the DoD from industry. And so from that point of view, these are very very specialized in some cases, but very valuable skill sets for the department. And as you know, we can't always pay as well as maybe some of the commercial competitors might, right? So we have that kind of disadvantage right from the beginning. I think traditionally, although I've seen some really good work on this lately, but we traditionally have very large and cumbersome hiring processes. And so when I'm competing in the same industry where I have the Googles and Facebooks that can really snap up good talent very quickly, that also becomes a liability. But that's about getting people in the door. I think once they're in the department, the same kind of systems come into play, though, because they're building up very specialized and very skill sets that could be well compensated out in industry. In many cases, people stay because they are so connected to the mission, and feel that what we're doing here is so important. But in other cases, that disparity in pay that we might see, or disparity in benefits, becomes a bit much and hard to ignore over time.
Yeah, and there's more and more activities in the department that are demonstrating the ability to attract a really high quality technical software workforce, ranging from the traditional places, Army Research Lab, Navy Research Lab, the Air Force labs have always had contingents of software engineers working on these problems, ranging from basic research work to technology development to supporting systems. And then newer activities, Army Applications Laboratory, Kessel Run, right? The different activities that seem to be doing a very good job of attracting a new talent into the software field.
Yes, and so I think that you mentioned attracting folks from industry to come over, but I think there's, in a way, and maybe paradoxically, I think that part of the solution is to have much more of an opportunity for folks to come in and out. We don't want the as I mentioned, I think our practices, and up until recently, have been very different from the commercial environment, right? And so it's been very hard if you get skill sets out there to come in, or if you develop your skill set within the department, to really go out and apply that in the larger industry. And I think to the extent that we can get ourselves caught up, start to really apply across the enterprise, a lot of the more industry best practices, it becomes easier to bring folks in and out. And I think that's absolutely what we want. We absolutely do want to retain people. We want that longevity. We need that expertise to stick around. But the constant infusion of new ideas is also a benefit of itself, and making sure that's one way of making sure that we don't stray too far from industry best practices, having people come with these expectations about, well, here's how software is supposed to be done. Here's what I could do out there, and have that constant pressure to kind of do the same within the department as well.
And like you said, though, I bet you if you surveyed most of a graduating class in a computer science department at most major research universities or universities in this country, they wouldn't think of the Department of Defense or Defense Industrial Base as the first target of where they're going to spend some of or all of their careers. But as you said, once you expose them to the problems and the tools and the mission and the interesting, more complex sometimes challenges and things they might see on the commercial side, you can get people hooked and into the system. Right?
Yes, I'm one of those folks that I'm here because I think we have such a compelling mission profile in the department, which is very different, I think, from working out in other places, and so I absolutely believe that's something that will resonate with a large percentage of folks. But but at the same time, I think it's on us. To make sure that we're providing them the right career advancement too, right? We don't want folks to come just because they love the mission and then feel that they're stuck here. So we want to, as they come on, we want to make sure that we're continually giving them new challenges, new ways to grow their skill set, that they really get to develop themselves as software engineers in ways that are important to them individually as well.
An issue that comes up perennially in software discussions, it came up in this workshop again, is the issue of something called ATOs.
Yes.
As something that inhibits DoD's ability to adopt innovative software. So what is an ATO?
Sure. Well, an ATO is authority to operate. And so what that refers to is that I can acquire the system, I can build out the capability, but then actually to get it into the field, we do have a check that says, okay, this is really ready to go out, that we can look and say that it's safe, it's secure, it does the right things, it's not going to be have unintended attack vectors and things like that. So there is this check that goes on.
So
right?
They are not inherently evil things. They exist for a purpose.
Absolutely not. That was one of the important points I wanted to make, was that sometimes we talk about streamlining the process, which is absolutely what we want to do. We're trying to shorten the distance between developing new capability and getting it out to the warfighter. But we want to protect the important equities in the process as we do that, right? So this check that if I put things out in the field and give it to the warfighter, unintended bad things are not going to happen. That's absolutely important. And so what we need to do is not look at that as a bad thing, but think about how we can speed the process up without cutting corners, without giving up some of the important protections that we have there. And again, I mean, in the context of the workshop, of course, this came up in the context of S&T, right? That what we can use here certainly are better ways of doing automation. I think some of the things actually that we talked about in our 2021 study about researchers going, it's maybe things like developing a theory of evidence. That is, we want each piece of software to come with some kind of provenance, and I understand how well has it been tested, where has it been tried, what kind of operationally relevant testing has been done to it, and use that to make a decision in a way that's as consistent and repeatable as I can get it to be, right? And so there's a lot of work that goes into that. We've dealt with things like this for very specialized areas of software, nuclear power plants for sure, and issues like that, but even those, I think, have some element of subjectivity in it still, right? And so we really need to make sure that we're adopting the best of those practices, but also looking to S&T to say, where can we be doing this better? And then beyond that, kind of bringing on all the other stakeholders, right? Because just because I have a technically deep and solution that the researchers trust doesn't mean it's going to be effective in practice unless I can get people comfortable with using it and that it's really driving us in the right direction. So there's a lot of dimensions here, but again, I think S&T has an important role in pushing this forward.
All right, Forrest, thanks for that. Thanks for the summary of the workshop, its findings and its recommendations, plus the discussion of Carnegie Mellon Software Engineering Institute, the challenges on software acquisition. And thank you for joining us on the podcast today. I want to take a moment to preview some other events that are going to be run by the Emerging Technologies Institute in the next few weeks and months. On June 14th, please join us for the latest in our Tech 101 series. Printed Circuit Boards 101 is in June. Forrest was actually the host of one of our previous 101s, Agile Software 101. And so this logically follows on that, the hardware side of it, printed circuit boards 101. I'd also like to make sure everybody's aware that NDIA is hosting its first annual Emerging Technologies Conference at the JW Marriott in Washington, D.C. That's going to be held August 28th to 30th, 2023. We've got great keynoters, panels, and technical presentations all lined up for that conference. There's a lot of information about that available. Registration, sponsorship information, display information can be found on our website. That's www.emergingtechnologiesinstitute.org. Please make sure to subscribe to this podcast on our YouTube channel. And thank you once again all for joining us today on the Emerging Technology Horizons podcast.